Hi, I'm Chuck from Whitlox Homestead. Today we're going to take a look at assembling the stand for our mini forge. The parts of the mini stand are two short side pieces, two long side pieces, four legs, and the hardware to put it together. The first thing we want to do is make sets of the stand legs. When the flanges are pointed toward one another, you should get a matching set of hole patterns. There's a set that are closer to the bottom and a set that are a little higher. And we're going to start with the pair of legs that have the lower set of holes. So set these aside. And we'll get started with these two. The stand is a truncated pyramid shape, so these lower holes are going to use the longer side piece, and you'll notice that they have an angled cut. The long end is going to be the bottom. So this stand design is 1/8 inch steel, and it's going to rely on the interference between the end of this side piece and the inside of the angle iron for stiffness. So once that gets bolted in there, this flat edge interferes here and you get a really stiff structure. But until the bolts are tight, it's going to be fairly loose, and we actually want that. So I'll refer back to that as we go. But we're just going to start by putting the bolts in place. A bolt, a lock washer, and a nut in each hole. From the outside, notice that this cross piece is on the inside of the angle. We're dropping hardware here. We're going to leave things loose until the very end. And the reason for that is that we have some alignment to do at the end. And if we tighten everything too soon, things aren't going to line up. Okay, so that is how we start. Alright, the next step is to build up from what we have here. We have upper holes left to build from, and that tells us that we need the short side pieces. Once again, they have the angled cut, a long end and a short end, and the long pointy end goes to the bottom of the stand. Okay, so we have a really floppy assembly here, and we're ready for the next step. We're going to set this aside and go to those other legs. Show you a magic trick here. This was the set with the higher holes. If we rotate them like this and put the flanges pointing one another from there, now we have a lower set of holes. And we have a long side piece. So we need to bolt this together. Okay. Okay, our next step is to put these two assemblies together. There's 4 holes left, so not a lot of mystery where things go. It is a little unwieldy at this point, so if you have a helper, you might want to use them at this point. Okay, that is our basic assembly. Everything's really floppy right now, and that is in fact what we want. Here's why. At the top of the stand, there's the 4 holes that match the 4 flange holes in our mini forge. So because of the possibility of misalignment, if we leave it loose at this point, we can set the stand on, we can set the forge on here and line everything up as we tighten it, and everything works out. If we tighten it, then we can be fighting to get these lined up with the flange holes on the forge. The other thing is that the stand really needs to be sitting on a flat surface while we do this. Alright, the last step is to put the forge on our stand, and there's a couple of things we need to know before we can do that. First of all, the stand is not square at the top here. There's a long side, which you can tell by the longer side piece. So the lower side piece is the long side piece. So this dimension is slightly greater than this dimension, and that's designed to match the bottom of the forge, which is also not square. So I have our mini forge here, has a bracket and manual blower on it, and I have put the bolts in the holes, which will make this next step a little easier. If you have a helper, this would be a good time to use them. If you can get one hole lined up, then you, which I've done on this back corner, then you can start to move things around until they line up. Just be careful not to drop it as you go. Highly recommend a helper. If you have tightened things up too much, if you've tightened these side pieces up too much, then you'll know about it at this point because it's going to fight you. Alright, so I have it setting in its holes, and we're ready for lock washers and nuts. Alright, the last step in the assembly process is to tighten all those bolts that we've left loose up to this point. We have the stand on a relatively flat surface. We have the forge installed, and we're ready to start tightening. Handy dandy impact driver makes this go really fast. And we're done. So now everything's going to be very stiff, very strong. 1/8 inch metal means there's not going to be any yield from here on out. Time to make some fire.